$2 million.
$2 million. We got paid $5,000 a piece to do that movie.
A film made on just $3.5 million shot in only 12 days. Yet it went on to gross over $300 million. Friday wasn't just a comedy. It shook Hollywood to its core and became a true symbol of street culture. But then something no one expected happened. The cast started walking away right at the height of its success. Chris Tucker vanished without explanation. John Witherspoon revealed he was paid only $5,000. Faison Love refused to return. And the final sequel, Last Friday, was buried for more than 20 years, despite fans begging for it. You think Friday was just a comedy? Think again. Friday is a story of shocking secrets of betrayal behind the spotlight and of truths that rocked Hollywood. In the mid-90s, when gang violence and the drug epidemic dominated South Central Los Angeles, most films set in the neighborhood were drenched in blood guns and despair. Audiences were used to movies like Boys in the Hood or Menace II Society, where the streets looked like nothing short of hell on earth. Then came Friday 1995, an unexpected script from Ice Cube and DJ Pooh. Instead of gunfire, Friday told the story of an ordinary day. Two lazy young men sitting on a porch talking, joking, and stumbling into ridiculous situations with their neighbors. It was a whole new perspective. South Central wasn't just crime and violence, it was friendship, community, and humor rising above hardship. Still filming was constantly interrupted by the sound of real gunshots in the area. As Ice Cube recalled, "We didn't have to act, the neighborhood told its own story." With a tiny budget of $3.5 million and a 12-day shoot, no one expected much. But Friday became a cultural phenomenon, raking in over $300 million and turning into a cult classic. Decades later, people still quote its lines and relive its scenes as legends of the streets. And to give the movie its soul, they needed a character, like Smokey. Chris Tucker, the star who exploded, then suddenly disappeared. At first, the role of Smokey was actually written by DJ Pooh for himself. But as production drew closer, the studio grew worried. They felt the film would be hard to sell if the lead was given to an unknown face. At the first table read, Chris Tucker made no impression. He read the script too literally flat, without energy or personality. The room fell so silent that Tucker thought his chance had already slipped away. But in that moment, director F. Gary Gray took a gamble. Put the script down. Just improvise. Do it like you're on stage. And right then, Tucker exploded. He fired off lines like rap, bouncing back and forth, adding ad-libs, gestures, sly glances, Smokey complaining on the porch, his hilarious arguments with Big Worm, his terrified reactions to Debo. So much of it was improvised on the spot. The crew burst out laughing in real time. Those improvised moments breathed life into Smokey, to the point where the studio scrapped Chris Rock and Tommy Davidson and handed the role to Tucker. The chemistry between Tucker and Ice Cube was electric, one deadpan, the other explosive. Craig became the straight man, Smokey the live wire, and every scene crackled with energy. When Friday premiered, Smokey instantly became iconic. Audiences repeated his lines, mimicked his expressions. Overnight, Tucker shot to A-list status, paving the way directly to the Rush Hour franchise. But just as Hollywood opened its doors wide, Tucker walked away. When Next Friday 2000 went into development, Chris Tucker was nowhere to be found. And the reason, surprisingly, it came down to religion. After his rise to fame, Tucker chose a more spiritual path. He no longer wanted to embody a character who was a weed addict, a role he felt demeaned both himself and his community. As Tucker told People, "I didn't want to represent everybody smoking weed." He added, "I never thought about doing a sequel. I always wanted to do one great role, then move on to the next movie." Ice Cube later confirmed, "We were ready to pay Chris Tucker $10 to $12 million to do Next Friday, but he turned it down for religious reasons. He didn't want to curse or smoke weed on screen anymore." It wasn't just about image. Tucker put his personal standards first. He refused to repeat the stoner stereotype, choosing instead to move into a new phase of his career, action films, like Rush Hour, instead of the weed-fueled chaos of Friday. There were also rumors that Tucker demanded $1 million payday, more than the Friday team could afford. Ice Cube denied it. It wasn't about money. Chris simply didn't want to play that role anymore. Still, the gap between a rising Hollywood star and a low-budget cult comedy had grown too wide to bridge. Chris Tucker burst onto the scene like fireworks in Friday, but just as quickly, he was gone. Smokey would live only in the first film. That absence is both a lasting regret and proof of a hard truth. Sometimes a single role can catapult someone to stardom, but that same role can become a shadow they choose to leave behind. And with the very soul of the film gone, cracks over money, fame, and respect only grew deeper. After Tucker, other cast members too would drift away from the Friday block, leaving behind a legacy that was both brilliant and broken. John Witherspoon, Papa Willie Jones, and the Paycheck Shock. If Chris Tucker was the rebellious soul of Friday, then John Witherspoon was its family heart. As Willie Jones, the quirky, sharp-tongued black dad Witherspoon became the comedic anchor of the entire film. Anyone who's seen Friday can never forget Willie's straight-faced delivery of half-serious, half-ridiculous life lessons. Don't go in the bathroom for about 35-45 minutes. You win some, you lose some, but you live. You live to fight another day. Lines that sounded like throwaway nonsense became immortal, quoted across American pop culture for decades. What most people don't know, 90% of those lines weren't in the script. Witherspoon practically ad-libbed his way through. Director F. Gary Gray later recalled, "Every time he opened his mouth, the whole crew was on the floor laughing. We couldn't even cut scenes because every improv turned into gold." Even DJ Pooh, the film's co-writer, admitted that many of the most viral scenes weren't in the original script at all. Half joking, half serious, he confessed, "I was jealous sometimes." Witherspoon could steal the spotlight with just one improv. Glorious on screen, but the reality behind it was brutal. For all of John Witherspoon's brilliance in Friday, the ad-libs that saved entire scenes, the one-liners that became cultural gems, he was paid just $5,000. Compared to a film that grossed over $300 million, that paycheck felt like a slap in the face. America's dad for an entire generation, the man who gave audiences unforgettable laughter, was barely paid enough to cover a few months of bills. Witherspoon himself recalled bluntly, "No sugarcoating. We got paid $5,000 apiece to do that movie." He stressed that the entire main cast earned the same meager fee for the first film, even though Friday would later make them street icons. To make the picture even harsher, Faison Love, who played Big Worm, confirmed he only received $2,500, a figure so low he publicly voiced his anger years later. The result, cast members remembered Friday with both pride and bitterness. Pride because the film became cultural history. Bitterness because their talent had been valued so cheaply. Witherspoon's paychecks did rise in the sequels, around $400,000 for Next Friday and reaching $1 million for Friday After Next. But the first film, the one that made Friday legendary, was done more for passion than money. For a character who left such a deep mark on audiences, that original paycheck was nothing short of shocking. It also exposed the brutal unfairness in how studios value talent. And while Witherspoon at least got the chance to make it back in later films for another cast member, the story would play out as a much darker tragedy. Not only underpaid, but slowly abandoned by the very franchise that had made him famous. Tiny Lister, Debo. From the street bully, who struck fear, to the pain of being left behind. In Friday, every time Debo showed up, the whole neighborhood held its breath. From the bulging white eyes and fierce scowl to the scenes where he borrowed bikes or snatched gold chains, Tiny Lister created a villain who was both hilarious and terrifying. Craig Ice Cube and Smokey Chris Tucker might have delivered the laughs, but it was Debo who carried the hidden tension. With his nearly 6.5 frame and the muscular build of a former professional wrestler, Lister perfectly embodied the neighborhood bully. Someone anyone from a poor district would instantly recognize, the big guy who intimidated others and took from the weak. Tiny Lister, drawing on his wrestling background, turned Debo into a street culture icon, both funny and frightening. Scenes like Red crying after losing his bike or Smokey ducking in fear as Debo walked by became lasting symbols of 1990s street life. But like many others in Friday, Tiny Lister was never paid what he was worth. Despite being one of the film's most unforgettable characters, the shadow of fear behind the comedy, his paycheck was little more than symbolic. Lister admitted in interviews that while he was proud of Debo, he felt bitter disappointment that Friday's massive success never translated into fair compensation. The movie grossed over $27 million at the box office and made many times more through VHS, DVD, and TV rights. Yet none of that profit made its way back to the cast. For Lister, Friday was a career turning point, but the low pay taught him a hard lesson in Hollywood, especially in low-budget films. Black actors without clout were often undervalued. As he put it, it was an expensive lesson. You can create a legendary character, but if you don't have bargaining power, you're still left outside the system. Hopes of a comeback, and the long wait. After the first film's success, fans expected Debo to continue haunting the neighborhood. Tiny Lister did return in Next Friday 2000, but the role was cut down. Debo was reduced to a convict who escapes a gimmick cameo rather than a central force. By Friday, after Next 2002, he appeared only briefly, little more than a shadow of the legend he once was. Rumors swirled that Lister clashed with the studio over contracts. But unlike Chris Tucker or Faison Love, he didn't walk away. The reason Lister admitted wasn't money, it was loyalty. He considered Ice Cube a real brother, and that bond convinced him to return even when the role was diminished. Still, Lister often expressed sadness that Debo, loved and feared by audiences alike, wasn't developed to his full potential. In interviews, he spoke of last Friday as the final chance to restore Debo's legend. "I'm just waiting for the day to bring Debo back, to strike fear into the block one more time," he said. But the project dragged on for over 20 years, snarled in script disputes and money fights, leaving Debo trapped on paper. In the end, he could no longer wait for the final film. In December 2020, Tiny Lister suddenly passed away at age 62. The news stunned Friday fans everywhere. Debo the Giant, whose shadow silenced an entire neighborhood, was gone forever. And with him, the dream of a true Last Friday reunion died as well. Lister's death left behind a bitter irony on screen. He was king of the block, the man everyone feared. But off-screen, he was just another actor. The system discarded, never paid what he deserved for the iconic character he created. And yet his tragedy was not the only one. Another cast member would suffer a fate just as heartbreaking. Faison Love, Big Worm, the funny kingpin who was paid next to nothing. In Friday, if Debo spread fear with his fists, Big Worm spread tension with just a few phone calls. Sitting in a purple ice cream truck, rocking tight curls like a clown wig, munching snacks while giving out orders, Big Worm was one of the strangest drug kingpins ever put on screen. Funny, yet dangerous. With only a handful of scenes, the character became the perfect seasoning that spiced up the film, making audiences laugh while keeping them on edge. Faison Love took on the role of Big Worm in his early 20s, practically unknown in Hollywood. He turned the character into a living meme before the word meme even existed. The lines, the hairstyle, the furious glare when Smokey refused to pay up, all of it left a mark. But unlike the power he wielded on screen in real life, Faison had no power at all when it came to his contract. When Friday became a hit, fans assumed the cast must have struck it rich. The reality was brutal. Faison Love later revealed he was paid only $2,500 for the role of Big Worm, not even enough to cover a month's rent in Los Angeles. He put it bluntly in an interview, "I got paid $2,500 to do Friday. The movie turned into a cultural phenomenon, and me, I still had bills to pay." The injustice laid bare. Before the public love's revelation poured gasoline on the fire of the cheap Friday salaries controversy. When John Witherspoon admitted, "We got paid $5. 0 apiece to do that movie," and Love confirmed he got half that amount, the public began to see the truth. The extraordinary success of Friday was never shared equally. Love didn't hold back. He even called out Ice Cube, saying Cube, as both the star and co-writer, should have fought harder for the cast to be paid fairly. On social media, he wrote openly, "Friday made hundreds of millions, but we, the ones who made it, only got paid pennies. Somebody got rich, but it sure wasn't us." Ice Cube fired back, explaining that Friday was an independent, low-budget project and couldn't afford higher salaries. He argued that the real reward was the fame the film gave its cast. But for Love, that explanation rang hollow. Bitterness and the void that couldn't be filled. The injustice left Faison Love refusing to return for the sequels. Big Worm, a character with limited screen time but unforgettable presence, would forever remain a one-and-done role. Love admitted, "I love that character, but I couldn't come back if they were still paying that little. I still gotta live." Big Worm became one of Friday's one-hit wonder icons. And Faison Love's story stands as proof. Even if you create cultural memories, if Hollywood doesn't value you, those memories won't pay the bills. And it wasn't just the kingpins or giants who walked away. Even Debbie, the sweet shining light in a world of weed smoke and gang tension, chose another path. But her reason wasn't money. It was career choices, and a few rumors behind the scenes. Nia Long, Debbie, and the career. Turn in the chaotic street life of Friday. Debbie was the rare bright spot, the beautiful, strong neighbor who stood out as a source of sweetness and strength. Played by Nia Long. Debbie wasn't just Craig's dream crush. She was an independent feminine force in a cast dominated by men. Her moments standing up for her friend or fearlessly confronting Felicia made Debbie the embodiment of a neighborhood girl who was both tender and tough. Friday was a launchpad, but Nia Long quickly chose a different path. After 1995, her career exploded with bigger, more diverse roles. The Best Man, 1999, a landmark black romance film series. Big Mama's House, 2000, alongside Martin Lawrence, and dozens of films and TV shows that followed. Debbie was just a milestone, not a destiny that held her back. In interviews, Nia Long made it clear she wanted to challenge herself with deeper projects. She didn't want to be typecast as the dream girl next door forever. There was, however, one intriguing detail. The on-screen chemistry between Nia Long and Ice Cube was so natural, so real, that rumors spread they were secretly dating behind the scenes. While never confirmed, the speculation made Nia Long hesitant to stay tied to the Friday brand. In the 1990s, Hollywood landscape, where black actresses were scrutinized more for their personal lives than their craft, choosing her own path was both a safe and smart decision. And Nia Long proved she didn't need Friday to shine. She became a star in her own right, with a steady career spanning over 2 decades. After the pay scandals and career pivots of her castmates, it was Tiny Zeus Lister Jr.'s turn to reveal another dark side of the story, a loyalty that kept him in the franchise, but also left him with bitter disappointment. And if Nia Long could still be remembered fondly, one smaller character became something else, entirely haunted forever. Not by money, but by a single throwaway line that turned into a lifelong curse. Angela Means, Felicia, and By Felicia became a curse. In a movie filled with chaotic characters like Friday, it is hard to believe that Felicia, the sloppy neighbor who appeared for only a few minutes, left one of the deepest impressions. The scene where Felicia dragged herself over to ask Craig and Smokey for some weed, only to be brushed off by Ice Cube with the line, "By Felicia," seemed like just a passing joke. But unexpectedly, those 2 words became a global meme, lasting longer than some of the main characters. By Felicia became a cultural phenomenon. The phrase was used everywhere in America as a way to dismiss someone from daily life, to television shows, and even blockbuster films like Straight Outta Compton. In the eyes of the public, Felicia was no longer just a side character in Friday. She became a pop culture symbol, all because of a single line. But in real life, it was a curse. Angela Means, the actress who played Felicia, admitted that the name Felicia clung to her for many years to the point of causing real harm. Instead of being recognized as an actress, she was teased and branded as Dirty Felicia, exactly like the poor, shabby character on screen. Even worse, Angela recalled an unforgettable memory. Once a group of strangers suddenly burst into my house just to yell, "Bye, Felicia," and then ran off. I was frozen. It was no longer a joke. It was a nightmare. A line that was meant for entertainment had become a shadow haunting her private life. After Friday, Angela Means could hardly escape the Felicia label. Casting directors looked at her and only saw that sloppy image. Instead of a launchpad, the role became a chain that restricted her career. Many years later, Angela chose to step away from Hollywood, open a vegan restaurant, and find peace, far from fame. By Felicia will continue to echo in American culture as proof of the power of Friday. But for Angela Means, it was not only glory, it was also a curse that made her remembered and hurt at the same time. A brief character created an unforgettable mark, but also forced the actress to pay with her own peace of mind. If even a side character had to pay such a heavy price, then those on the front lines could not escape the vortex of power. Because behind the stage of Friday, there were not only cheap salaries or viral lines, but also a tense battle between Ice Cube and the studio, a battle that buried forever the film the world had been waiting for last Friday. The internal war with the studio and the tragedy of last Friday. Few people know that from the very first film, Friday was already a battle of wills between Ice Cube and the studio. New Line Cinema, which saw Friday only as a low-budget experiment, always tried to smooth out the film to make it easier to sell to a mainstream audience. They suggested cutting weed scenes, reducing profanity, and especially wanted to rate the film PG-13 instead of R. But Ice Cube did not back down. He declared firmly in a closed meeting with the executives, "If it's PG-13, it'll just be Home Alone in the Hood. If Friday isn't real, then it isn't Friday." That statement was like a slap in the face to the studio's strategy. Cube understood clearly. Friday could not be just a light comedy. It had to reflect the grit and toughness of South Central, the very soul of the script. This determination kept Friday authentic, but it also made the relationship between him and the studio tense and suspicious. Last Friday, the script buried. After the success of 3 films, Ice Cube poured his heart into the 4th Last Friday. The script was finished early, full of fan service details, even bringing Smokey back, the biggest dream of the fans. But instead of giving the green light, Warner Brothers, after buying New Line, put the script in a drawer. They delayed it using the excuse of lacking commercial appeal, leaving Last Friday stuck in limbo for over 20 years. Meanwhile, fans kept shouting on social media, creating petitions demanding production. Phrases like "Shut, make Last Friday" or "Shut, bring back Smokey" spread across Twitter, turning Last Friday into a ghost that haunted Cube and the cast. The tragedy grew heavier when original cast members John Witherspoon, Willie Tiny Lister, Debo, and A.J. Johnson Easel passed away one after another. Each time an actor died, the chance of a reunion grew smaller. Fans grew desperate, even creating the hashtag #ZaireFreeFriday to call on Warner Brothers to return the script to Ice Cube. A faint hope in 2023. It was not until 2023, when Warner Brothers changed its leadership, that a new glimmer of hope appeared. Ice Cube confirmed there had been more positive signals saying the door is not completely closed. But after nearly 3 decades, the question still lingers. Will Last Friday be revived before it is too late? But there is still another interesting secret about the movie Friday. That you probably never knew Friday was almost shot in black and white. Few people know that Friday once faced a decision that could have completely changed the face of film history. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh actually considered shooting the movie in black and white. Why black and white? In the early 1990s, American indie films often used black and white as a way to save on production costs. Filming in color was more expensive in terms of equipment, lighting, and post-production, and would push the budget higher, while Friday only had $3.5 million. To save as much as possible, Ice Cube and Pooh put forward the option of shooting minimalist style, like Kevin Smith's Clerks 1994, an indie film that was hugely successful, despite being shot entirely in black and white inside a convenience store. If that plan had been approved, Friday might have turned into a quirky indie comedy, cheap but full of personality, aimed at only a small audience, a decision that changed everything. In the end, the idea was scrapped at the last minute. The reason Ice Cube believed that the colors of South Central were the soul of the story. The shiny lowriders, the graffiti walls. Smokey's bright floral shirts, if reduced to black and white, all of it would lose its life. The choice to film in color made Friday a vivid portrait of neighborhood life, gritty, raw, yet full of humor. Smokey in his patterned shirt. Ice Cube's stern face outside the pastel-colored house, Debo, towering over his red bike, all became ingrained in pop culture memory thanks to those authentic colors. What if it had been black and white, critics later joked? If Friday had been shot in black and white, it would have just been Clerks in South Central, and Smokey would never have become a cultural icon. It is hard to imagine lines like "Bye Felicia," or the scene where Debo seizes the bike carrying the same effect in flat monochrome. Ice Cube, the boss behind Friday. Both beloved and controversial. Looking back over nearly 3 decades, Friday is not just a movie, It is a cultural empire. And at the center of that empire is always Ice Cube. He conceived the script, fought to protect its rawness against studio pressure, kept the cast together, and carried the flame after Chris Tucker walked away. Without Cube, Friday might have remained just a small indie project instead of a cult classic that lives on in American culture. But that power also made Cube a double-edged sword. On one side, fans praised him as the boss who turned a $3.5 million film into a billion-dollar phenomenon, the man who fought for 20 years to push Last Friday forward. On the other, he was also the focus of criticism over the cheap pay. Many actors blamed Cube when they felt they had not been paid fairly. In the end, Ice Cube became both admired and controversial. To fans, he was the fighter who refused to bow to Hollywood. To some colleagues, he was the man in power who did not share the benefits. Perhaps this contradiction is what makes Ice Cube unique. A boss who built a legend but is also tied to its cracks. That is why Friday, even unfinished, has never faded away. It carries both love and disputes that never end. Friday left not only laughter, but also an unanswered question. If the studio had paid fairly, if Ice Cube had full control, if Smokey had truly returned, would Last Friday have become the biggest cultural explosion of the decade, instead of just an unfinished dream in the hearts of fans? And you, what do you think? Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the most exciting stories.